So thanks. That was a fascinating overview of where Philips has gone.
Sorry I rushed through that.
No. It's interesting. The company is going through such a transformation. This company that people might associate with televisions or lighting, and the core of the business has really changed. Last year, I think 45% of revenue came from health. There's been spin-offs. And normally when we think of a business transformation on this scale, I think we think of designers busting into the C-suite and saying, we can fix this if you do something different. Obviously that's not the case at Philips, which has a strong design tradition and has had for many, many years. So my question is, as the business has transformed and continues to transform radically, what has the role of the design organization been as part of that? I mean, how have you been involved in deciding where to go, what to keep, what to change, et cetera, especially, with such a long history at the company yourself?
It's almost like the question of life, isn't it?
Well, we try to get to the fundamental
indeed.
truths here.
Indeed, I think that the Philips company has been really evolving and also responding as well, guided by a certain set of values which we are lucky enough to be still strong after 100 over years and still being relevant. I think it's because we are really picking on the issues which are closest to the end user. Is health, right? It will always be there. And here, seeing how it's compounded by unaffordable healthcare costs, issues of urbanization, how can we as a company play our part to help? To be honest, I think this is beyond any government. It has to come together with the private sector and everybody else. And as mentioned, design is not new in Philips. We're 90 years. We have also transformed as well as a design function. In fact, the ambition is that where design is concerned, we started off as a department and then into a function. We're still pretty much a function. We have the ambition of really moving it as a faculty and eventually to be a culture. So I think that would be my short answer to your question, is that we want to have it as a very ubiquitous, it should be ubiquitous within the context of the company culture. Sure, there will be practitioners, there will be individuals who needs to be doing the work, but in terms of the mind, the behavior, that is where we are heading. We have achieved a lot in the sense that, for example, representation on the management team, around the table, we are there, but it's not just about occupying a seat. It's about constantly delivering what we should be delivering as a team beyond design. So in fact, the narrative of design should extend, and we're extending that. We just had a very interesting conversation that day with our own design team, because we have non-designers there, and whenever I say designers, they get upset, So I'm really right now thinking of a term to address the collective. I don't know what is it now. If there's any suggestion,
if anyone has any suggestions for a replacement word for designers, please use the app or come up after. I'm curious, how much has the design organization, as part of this multi-year transformation, changed? And is it the changes in the structure of the business that are changing the design organization, or is it the nature of the problems that you're trying to solve? Are you hiring different kinds of people because of the problems? And is it more how the business overall is changing, or is it the types of products and services you're trying to come up with?
A very good point, a very good question. Obviously, whenever a company reorganizes itself from an organization standpoint, it will have an impact and effect. But this is exactly where the healthy tension comes in. And design is a function. We are playing the role of pushing the boundaries within the company. That's where we will be having conversations and dialogue to say, hey, it's not just about reorganizing or organizing based on the company functionality that serves the current business needs, because we are helping. We have the role to see beyond. So we have to anticipate Never easy conversation,
Yeah.
right? If you're discussing with the business to say that, hey, I think you need to invest so much and so much in the next 2 to 3 years. Well, the first thing they ask is, do you have a business case, right? And that kind of conversation will happen, right? It's natural. Designers have to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Right? You shouldn't leave that conversation to somebody else, because then somebody else will be negotiating on your behalf, and then before you know it, you get nothing, right? So it's about learning also how to have the way of conversing, and some of these tools that we have created by demonstrating the value help us in those conversations. So hopefully next year when I'm having a conversation with the business of investments, they'll say yes, because they see the value of what we have brought. So we are creating evidence and artifacts for ourselves in those arguments.
I see. Your CEO has said that acquisitions are going to play a big role in the next couple of years. 2 questions about that. One, do you have a seat at that table? Are they asking you, look, this particular company is doing something technologically interesting, but the products don't look great. Can you fix this, or is it unfixable? Are you at that table? And when you do have an acquisition, how does your design organization kind of come and sprinkle the pixie dust on?
Yeah.
So trying to understand, a lot of medical device manufacturers come out of some very interesting research, but don't always have a kind of usability and design sensibility.
So I'll take your definition of acquisition in a broader sense.
Yeah.
And currently, indeed, we are keen to partner other companies as well. If it results in acquisition, that will be a business decision. But we are in that mode. We're in that mode. As I mentioned, I think healthcare is an area that you can't do it alone. There are many smaller companies which are providing very, very interesting and very compelling touchpoint solutions that we could put together. So increasingly, I'm part of the conversation, and that is more from, let's say, from a consideration of how do you apply the use of this company's technology. And that's very assuring to be part of the conversation. So I'm in conversation with my strategy colleague, for example, when he's considering certain companies. And basically is to also extend the mind of the strategy team to say, hey, looking beyond what they're seeing in this company they want to invest, right? What do you see? Yeah. And that's where we come in. So to imagine scenarios, maybe they can do this, maybe they can do that. And by offering that big picture, I think then it gives them better value in terms of evaluating those companies that we want to
I see.
work with.
Is it better to acquire or partner with a company that has good technology but no design, or a strong design sensibility that's different than your own?
I wouldn't pitch a mutually exclusive position between the two of technology and design. And that's where, to be honest, I also have some problem with sometimes when I see. I happened to be looking at a camera review that day on YouTube, and he was saying, function aside, the design is not good.
Full stop.
So the narrative is that, why are we pitting against design and technology in that way, or rather design also has a part to play in function as well, right? So doesn't matter. I think as long as either component is able to give value, I think that helps. The evaluation shouldn't be in the singularity of the design or the technology, but in its entirety when it comes together.
So one of the ways of achieving a sort of holistic outlook, as you mentioned in the presentation, is research, ethnography, and one of the very good questions. There's so many questions coming in. I've lost it, so I can't read it, but I'll paraphrase it. Sorry. Is how do you quickly study a new market, a new ethnicity, a new locality? Do you have any hacks or any tips to quickly understanding the dynamics of what's going on in a particular region that may be different even from the country level?
Yeah, I think for certain topics there are no shortcut. I mean, if you're talking about healthcare, you can't really have a shortcut to it, but I'm sure, and I think the audience here are very versed in how you could. I think the quickest way, at least in the experience of us as a design team, is to drop the designer into into the home of the consumer. That we did that with our consumer portfolio, and that you learn in no time. In 3 days, you may not learn everything, but at least you are there to experience. And that's what we did. Again, back to the rice cooker. Somehow this topic kept popping out. Actually, we were trying to learn the rice eating habits of Indonesians. And we just have the designer there for 3 days, and we picked up so much about those habits which can easily bring back. Yeah.
Interesting. We've got a couple of suggestions for design terms: design innovators, design change makers, and innovation strategists. So, yeah, we'll write them down. Thank you for the suggestion. Sharon. Of course, Sharon. So one thing I wanted to ask, the title is Get on Their Side. You show the continuum space, where you bring people in, bring partners in. And I think collaboration and co-creation are great fuzzy words, but I'm curious how you and your team manage conflict. Some of the most famous design minds were famously stubborn. I won't say any names, but rhymes with Steve Schmobs. So how do you manage when you know that something isn't working, when a direction, someone is convinced of something that you disagree with?
Maybe I'll call out a couple, one slide actually here. Sorry. So this is what we do. We spend a lot of time doing this before we go into the solutioning of the proposal of it. And this is the collaboration part. It's actually very tangible. In this case, it's actually a project we're doing in southern China. Here, we're still working on it. Spend a lot of time. And that is the part where we really, instead, not just about gathering information, but it's actually, in a way, a slow form of seeking alignment with all the stakeholders. Right?
Hold on. So these are doctors and medical professionals, and the guy in the backpack's a designer?
Yeah. So you can see our designers are actually also being put in those blue robes because this is an emergency department. They need to go in. I see. Right. There's the CEO of the hospital. Spent a lot of time chatting with him. Yeah. He may have his view, right? But his staff may have a different view. Yeah. So we need to check, right? Endless conversation is actually to your question about the fact that the collaboration part is actually very tangible, and it allows us to then end up in a situation in an agreement which almost very little dispute. Almost very little dispute. Yes, I think the head of nurse, for example, this lady here, may have her own view of how certain things to be done. But that's where we come in to say, hey, you know what? Let's look at the patient. Let's look at what is the desired outcome workflow that you want to achieve. Is it efficiency? Is it about the higher turnover of patient, or you really want to attain a certain quality? So based on those objectives, we will reduce those situations whereby there will be heavy clash of opinion, because our opinion will be weighted on the clinical truth of the discussion. Right? Obviously, layer upon will be what is the ambition of the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So that's what we do. Right? And I think we're also in a field where there are no heroes in design. Right? Which, it takes a certain profile of designers to be in this field. And that's probably the difference. It's just like I always see, right? If you look at the Airbus 380, right? Yeah. Can you name the designers who worked on it? It's a beautiful object. It flies in the air, but who worked on it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Likewise, I think when it comes to healthcare solutions like this, that's where we are almost contributing, sort of leading from the back.
There's so many markets within this region. How do you prioritize which ones you go into next, or where you do a particular project? Yeah,
largely driven by business objectives, and that is nothing biased with regard to which country is on a lower priority. It's also about the cost to serve as well. For example, I mean, as in that our resources are not infinite. Right, so you got to make a choice where you can make the most impact, and that is actually what is based on.
Impact being how much money you can make or how many people
well,
you can
not necessarily
serve?
not necessarily just on the monetary aspects, but also if you're talking about solutions. Mm-hmm. So we do have, for example, the Indonesia MUM project that you see there. It's not monetary return at this moment, but it's about getting into that part of the population, how to understand what is holding them back, what are the issues that we face that we're unable to have healthcare reach them affordably and at the quality that we want. And eventually with the learnings, we can then apply it to other markets as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, we're out of time, but I have one last question. In the continuum space and some of the slides you showed, I noticed the lighting was unlike lighting that I've seen in any doctor's office or hospital, which is usually scary, saw type lighting. So is that a separate product? Is that an integral thing to the solutions that you're delivering?
Yeah, it's part of the solutions, that we are considering. Ambient experience is one that we have been championing, and it's actually something that you see in hospitals.
People are adopting that. They're buying
exactly.
that too.
We also are pushing away certain assumptions of how a clinical environment should be. Why it should always be white and cold metal. I mean, I think the best clinical environment so far. I think the dentist has done the best job so far. Okay. In terms of making it comfortable. The chair. I still hate the wheezing sound, but I'm saying is that because it's consumer facing, the attempts to.
I think that says something about you. Yeah. That the dentist is the most comfortable place you feel. But
I didn't realize that came out. So.
Thank you very much. This has been great. Thank you all for your questions.